Hold on to your hats, folks, because the global economy just went on a wild ride. The US and China, locked in a bitter trade war for what feels like forever, finally decided to play nice. And the markets? Well, let's just say they celebrated harder than a Wall Street banker who just discovered Bitcoin in 2011. News of the tariff cuts hit the financial world like a shot of adrenaline. Stock markets from New York to Shanghai went absolutely bonkers. It was a sea of green as investors breathed a collective sigh of relief. The trade war, which threatened to plunge the global economy into recession, seemed to be on hold. For now, at least. This wasn't just some minor blip on the radar. Oh no, this was a full-blown market euphoria. The kind of reaction that makes you wonder if everyone had suddenly switched their anxiety meds for champagne and confetti. But the big question remains, is this the start of a beautiful friendship between the US and China, or just a temporary ceasefire in a much larger economic war? So what exactly did these two economic titans agree to? In a nutshell, they decided to hit the pause button on their tariff battle. The US was slapping tariffs of up to a whopping 145% on Chinese goods, making everything from smartphones to sneakers more expensive. China, not one to back down, retaliated with tariffs of their own, as high as 125% on US products. This tit-for-tat tariff war was starting to feel like a bad reality TV show with both sides digging in their heels. But this new deal changes the game. Tariffs on a wide range of goods are being slashed. Think electronics, agricultural products, even electric cars. The US will lower its tariffs to 30%, while China will drop theirs to 10%. But here's the catch. This truce is only temporary. We're talking a 90-day ceasefire starting May 14th. That's right, folks, just 3 short months for these two economic superpowers to work out their differences before the tariffs potentially come roaring back. It's like a high-stakes game of economic chicken, and the whole world is watching with bated breath. Remember that market euphoria we were talking about? Yeah, it was epic. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, that granddaddy of stock market indexes, shot up like a rocket. The S&P 500, home to America's biggest companies, wasn't far behind. Even the tech-heavy NASDAQ, which had been especially sensitive to trade war jitters, joined the party. But it wasn't just Wall Street doing the happy dance. Across the Pacific, the Shanghai Composite, China's main stock market, soared. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong followed suit. It was a synchronized global market rally, the likes of which we haven't seen in, well, quite a while. To put this into perspective, the S&P 500 futures jumped by almost 3%. That's huge. The NASDAQ futures, up nearly 4%. These numbers are basically the market equivalent of screaming from the rooftops. We're saved, maybe. Who's celebrating the hardest in this trade war ceasefire? Well, the usual suspects, big tech companies, farmers, and anyone who likes saving money. Think Apple, Tesla, John Deere, and maybe even your local grocery store. American tech giants, hammered by tariffs on Chinese-made components, are breathing a sigh of relief. Farmers who saw their soybean exports to China plummet are finally seeing a glimmer of hope. But not everyone's popping champagne. Small businesses, especially those who can't easily source goods from outside China, are feeling the heat. They're now facing stiffer competition from cheaper Chinese imports. And let's not forget about the workers and industries that were supposed to benefit from the trade war, like steel and aluminum. They're probably feeling a little betrayed right now. It's the classic tale of winners and losers in the global economy. Big corporations with global supply chains can adapt, but smaller players often get caught in the crossfire. And as the US and China try to hammer out a long-term deal, you can bet that lobbyists for both sides will be working overtime to protect their interests. Section 5. Election Year Gamble. A high-stakes deal in the Oval Office. Now let's talk politics, because you know this trade deal is as much about winning elections as it is about economics. With the 2025 US presidential election just around the corner, every decision made in the Oval Office is scrutinized through a political lens. And this trade deal is no exception. The trade war with China had been a major talking point for both parties. The incumbent administration touted it as a tough stance against unfair trade practices, while the opposition argued it was hurting American businesses and consumers. This new deal gives the incumbent a chance to claim victory, arguing they forced China to the negotiating table and secured concessions. But it's a risky gamble. If the 90-day truce doesn't lead to a lasting agreement, the tariffs come back, and the economy could take a hit right before the election. And you can bet the opposition will be hammering home the message that the deal was nothing more than a temporary band-aid on a self-inflicted wound. The stakes are high, and the clock is ticking. Section 6. Cheaper iPhones, more soybeans, what's in it for you? Okay, enough about the political maneuvering and economic jargon, let's get down to brass tacks. What does this trade deal mean for you, the average Joe or Jane? Well, for starters, it could mean cheaper iPhones. Remember those tariffs on Chinese electronics we talked about? Yeah, those are going down, which means prices on your favorite gadgets could follow suit. But it's not just about shiny new tech toys. This deal could also impact what's on your dinner table. China is a major buyer of American agricultural products like soybeans. The trade war hit farmers hard, but this truce could lead to increased exports and lower prices for consumers. So maybe that tofu scramble will be a little easier on the wallet. Beyond specific products, the deal could also bring some much-needed stability to global supply chains. Remember those empty shelves and shipping delays during the pandemic? Yeah, the trade war wasn't helping. This truce could help ease those bottlenecks and make it easier for businesses to get the goods they need. And that's good news for everyone. Section 7. Experts divided. Is this a lasting peace or a ticking time bomb? So, is this trade war truce the real deal, or just a temporary reprieve? Well, the experts are divided, as usual. Some see it as a major breakthrough, a sign that both sides are finally willing to compromise and find a way to coexist peacefully in the global economy. They point to the significant tariff cuts and the willingness to engage in further negotiations as reasons for optimism. But others are more cautious, warning that the hard issues are yet to be resolved. They point to the long history of mistrust between the US and China, as well as the many sticking points that remain on issues like intellectual property rights and technology transfer. They argue that the 90-day truce is just a temporary fix, and that the trade war could easily flare up again if a lasting agreement isn't reached. Adding to the uncertainty is the volatile geopolitical landscape. The South China Sea remains a major flashpoint, and the ongoing rivalry between the US and China in areas like artificial intelligence and 5G technology adds another layer of complexity. In short, there's a lot that could still go wrong, and only time will tell if this trade war truce will hold. Section 8. The future. A new world order or a return to trade wars. So, what does the future hold? Will this trade deal usher in a new era of cooperation and prosperity between the US and China? Or will we be back to the same old trade war rhetoric and economic uncertainty in a few short months? Honestly, folks, it's anyone's guess. The 90-day truce is a critical window of opportunity. If both sides can build on this initial momentum, address the remaining sticking points, and come up with a comprehensive and enforceable agreement, then maybe, just maybe, we can avoid a full-blown trade war. But it's going to take a lot of hard work, compromise, and maybe even a little bit of luck. One thing's for sure, the world is watching. This trade deal isn't just about the US and China anymore, it has implications for the entire global economy. So buckle up, because the ride's not over yet. Who knows what twists and turns lie ahead?